Well, 2020 was the year of disruption when we talk of COVID-19, when we talk of disruptions across industries, across the globe, whether it was the pharmaceutical industry or any other. There were disruptions as far as supply chain is concerned, manufacturing is concerned. However, it was also a year when the industry came up with newer solutions. It accelerated research, it shortened timelines for newer products to come to the market, and also managed its way around the supply chain hurdles so as to be better prepared for any next disruptions. Now, to understand how certain companies managed it at their end and to look at the digital transformation of the industry, today I have with me Mr. Sushil Suri, Chairman and MD of Morphin Labs, and Dilip Savni, MD at Rockwell Automation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here for this special panel discussion. Let me come to you, Mr. Suri, first. 2020 was certainly a year that, no one will ever forget, especially, if you were in the pharmaceutical industry with the kind of disruptions that we saw across supply chain, across manufacturing. Your company also launched a range of essential products to, stop the spread of COVID-19. You worked on non-contact infrared thermometers, among other products that you brought to the market. What kind of disruptions did you see in the manufacturing side of your business, production, and how did the company manage to get over the disruptions, and what were the solutions that you deployed?
Thank you, Archana. I think you very well defined 2020 was a challenge, but I would say every challenge has got an opportunity. So that was the starting point of 2020. Almost, I think in the beginning, only in January, February, when it started all in China, Wuhan, we had a lot of import from China. So we were basically tracking on a daily basis what's happening there. So we were clear that okay, something is going to happen here also. And we were mentally or internally preparing ourselves that someday if lockdown comes in India, because lockdown was happening in China every next day. So we prepared our internal team that in case there is a lockdown, the first thing was work from home. I mean, we started in March, but we were physically preparing for it from February onward. So I think around 10th March, when the flight restrictions started, on 20th March, the whole full Janta curfew was there. So between that, I think we from 15th, 16th March only, we started shifting guys back home. And we started putting their computer home and online banking, whatever was required. So I think that the first phase physically moved people out of office, but that was only the first step. Second was how do we connect to them? How do we reach them? How do we monitor them? And the banking was a big issue. We had physical banking, shifting to online banking, signatures, approvals. And of course, the IT was not prepared with so much of security controls and the data management. So overnight, people were, I would say, very aggressive. We were able to place people, and we never thought a typical old-style pharma manufacturing company would be working from home. So I would say that was a good start, and that's I would say, the enterprise of India, and that's the enterprise of digital readiness we had. Even during full curfew, full lockdown, we had got curfew passes. Our shipments from custom departments was released. Those are going to the factories. Factory was working, except for one day on that Janta curfew, or one of the days. We were working whole of the lockdown period. And we are proud to say the team had done unbelievable job and amazing, I would say, synergy among the team. Even the R&D guys sitting in their work, sitting in their hometowns or sitting in their homes, they have been conducting experiments which are being done in the plant. QC guys are doing testing and testing at the labs, and the bosses are sitting in the offices or they're sitting in the homes, and everything was managed very well. But all, I would say, thanks to technology, thanks to the Zoom calls, thanks to Microsoft Teams, Cisco, everybody has learned everything. And no surprises. Now, half of the travel has been cut already, except for the medical representative visiting the doctors. That's the bare minimum. Doctor still expects that. So other than that, I would say 60 to 70% of the travel has gone. And it has, I would say, maybe it has gone permanently. We have a big portion of business into diagnostic devices. So this is where we have seen a major revolution, like we saw the revolution of mobile devices, mobile phones. So when we were selling BP monitors and glucometers, we were actually had to convince everybody to buy a BP monitor or a glucometer. So glucometer sales have been growing quarter to quarter by almost 100%. And we had serious challenges of production of glucometers because, like you said, supply disruptions were there and cargo was not coming up, shipments were not arriving in time. We had limitation to increase the manpower. There was so much testing norms about COVID and then testing the people. I mean, all the restriction done, but still we grew almost 100% quarter to quarter on the glucometers.
Yeah, Mr. Suri, you know what? I actually wanted to ask you that. We've seen that actually 2020 brought diagnostics at the hands of the people, at the hands of the patients. They have been monitoring themselves and approaching the doctor. Telemedicine has become a reality. And, products that companies like yours make have become part of day-to-day lives of people. But is it going to be this way? What is your assessment? Do you think this is going to be a long-term thing, or once we are, out of this pandemic phase, once vaccination goes on, people will be back to the normal cycle? What is your assessment? Do you see diagnostics still to be at the hands of the people?
Certainly, at this stage, we feel that okay, this is a temporary thing. But like I said, that maybe to an extent these things will become permanent, because once you start checking your glucometer, you start checking your sugar at home, then you know that you can check it. You don't need to go to a doctor. And once you know that you can check BP at home, then you don't need to visit a doctor. And second thing, for example, something like oximeter. Nobody heard oximeter. This was a small device we were having since last 5 years. We were not even selling 1,000 oximeters in a year. Now we want 10 meters in a month. We can't produce. We don't have a capacity. So that's what is happening. Digital thermometer, of course, I can understand it may be temporary, because now every hotel, hospital, shop, clinic, everybody is checking thermometer. That may go away. But as far as self-care devices is concerned, and you use the right word, that now the patient is using in his own hand. That's what our brand is. Dr. Karpan says, health in your hands.
Before I get Mr. Sawhney into the conversation, I'll just very briefly take a comment, one more follow-up comment from you. You spoke about disruptions in manufacturing. You spoke about disruptions also in the supply and sales initially, and disruption in production. What part of the production of oximeters and all of this is happening in India, with the components and raw materials from India? How much of localization is there? And, are we self-reliant there? Everyone's been talking about Make in India, but has this period helped us move in that direction? What is your experience? Very briefly. Yeah.
So I would say we are on track. And like I said, we are the only company in the country who is manufacturing all these devices in India. We got a manufacturing setup. We have 100% production of glucometers, BP monitors. Of course, we had to start last year. We couldn't start because of labor shortages. This year will come up. Oximeters we are doing, stethoscopes we are doing. So these are all falling under the campaign of Make in India. Now the question is, Make in India, is it fully Make in India? The answer is no. We do not have the backup. We do not have the components. The components are still being imported. And there are laws wherein we are restricted in whether we can import this or not import this. But as we go forward, and as the government is supporting all these initiatives, more and more things will be manufactured in India. And more, I would say, supply chain would come up. And you might have noticed that government is giving incentive of that production link scheme, PLI scheme. So PLI is there available for production link for the API also, and this diagnostics also, even for the electronics also, mobile phones also. So that is where the backup would come. We are at least 2 to 3 years away to become fully reliant, but at least we have started the process.
Mr. Sawhney, come on this point. I wanted to take a comment from you exactly on this, and that is why I took a follow-up question with Mr. Suri. We are talking about resilient supply chains. The government is talking about Make in India. There is a PLI schemes. In your sense, where does the country stand as far as building this resilient supply chain for manufacturing of pharmaceutical and medical devices is concerned? And in your sense, what role can automation play in here, in kind of reducing the risk of disruptions similar to what we've seen in the last year?
So, it's a very, very topical question that you touched upon, Archana. And first of all, I completely agree with the point of view that Mr. Suri has laid out. Right. The short answer is I think we are getting better, and the kind of acceleration that that we've had the opportunity to witness the industry go in terms of its maturity to be more reliant. That's been quite awesome. COVID and this pandemic, it brings the broad connotation. I mean, when was the last time? A year ago, no one would have even thought that in a matter of 10 to 12 months, we're going to be having, so many different viable vaccine candidates, right? It's, you yourself just came back from, the vaccination camps and so forth. These things are getting accelerated because technology is bringing about game-changing, advances and maturity, right? Life sciences pharmaceuticals it's always, let's recognize, it's been a regulated industry, and being regulated, it's tough for the industry to move at the pace that other industries are able to move. But when you bring in these digital technologies and automation, right? Um, even a regulated industry, can think about, can imagine moving at a pace that was up until now, not even practically feasible. And India is pharmacy to the world, right? And it is very important not just for the state of the Indian life sciences industry, but it is having, a critical impact on the global life sciences pharmaceutical. Technologies are allowing you to imagine things, which are having impact both on the quality side of the operations as well as on the process side of the operations. Yield improvements, reliability improvements, and all of that, right? Let's imagine that you've certainly got a set of operators who are not fully trained, and you have operators who are trained but available in a different city, right? Now, how do you transfer knowledge from people who have that in their minds, right? How do you institutionalize that, and how do you actually make it available so that people who have less experience in operating those equipments be able to confidently operate those equipments, right? So using augmented reality, using decision support, using sometimes even things like digital twins, we've been able to actually accelerate the learnings of operators so that their confidence of operating the assets goes through a step change. One thing which I can talk about, which probably is the most powerful notion, is the power of advanced analytics, right? You're suddenly able to have vast amounts of data, which were always available, but to be able to bring them on a common platform and to apply deep learning, to apply machine learning to bring out insights which are never really available to you, right? Which tell you about when your process is likely to go out of spec, right? It's just giving, it's empowering the line side operators, plant supervisors in a manner in which they've never been in the past, right? So I would say, my submission to you is, COVID has really meant digital, and this change that the industry has seen. I don't need to, I'll be preaching to the choir, but this has been an irreversible change.
Absolutely. You touched upon, what was supposed to be my next question for you was on AI, in fact, advanced analytics, AI, and blockchain and data that everybody's talking about. You kind of briefly touched upon it, but I just want to understand one aspect from you on this. How close are we, or how real is the situation when we say that advanced analytics is actually driving supply chains? Is it actually driving production, or is it still in the nascent stage and needs some more time to actually develop to its full capabilities? Where are we as far as using these AI data and these analytics to deal with the disruptions in supply chain, in production, etc., and make it more seamless?
Let me instead give you a couple of examples, right? So you'll know how real it is, right? So this is no longer in the realm of white papers being written or some research work being done, right? We are already, right? We're using AI to detect production anomalies, right? And to give advanced warnings and alerts to operators and workers, so they can actually, investigate. You draw their attention to something which requires their attention, right? Why? Because machine learning is working and it picks up those anomalies, as opposed to the operator staying glued to a screen to watch when the process is going out of spec. Just a simple example. We are already integrating AI into process control equipments, and it's in form factors which integrates very, very easily into plant control systems, right? So what it does basically is you're nesting this capability in existing process control systems, so that you can maintain a continuous watch, or a continuous monitoring, identifying challenges as they arrive or as they are about to arrive, because you're talking about predictive capabilities, right? System is self-learning, right? So you don't need to teach these algorithms, because they learn by themselves, right? So that's making it a lot more easier for manufacturing engineers to integrate these into the just a handful of years ago, if you're using AI and ML, you had to necessarily think of having data scientists on staff, right? But by making sure that we are able to take this tech and embed it in a form factor that sits in existing process control systems, you actually don't need to have data scientists for a vast number of commonly used use cases, right?
Absolutely not science fiction. I just needed to understand how deeper has it penetrated, and you actually brought that up pretty nicely with examples. Mr. Suri, from the new advancement, the technological advancements that we're talking about, from AI to to data to blockchains. Has your company also, used some of the newer elements of technological advancements, and what has been the learnings in the last 1 year as far as moving ahead on technology is concerned?
I think the first learning, as I told earlier, is that the first learning is that okay, we have to be digital, and we should not be hesitant. We should step in, and actually the company stepped in. Now, as a part of the proposal, there were certain things which the company was already working upon, which have been, I would say, fast-tracked. For example, PPC, production planning and control, inventory management, logistics, this is all one package. This was earlier all being done manually. So now we are trying to get high-end software with AI included, and with all the, I would say, like Ms. Sani selling, all alerts included. So people have to get used to it. They have to board this bus. There's no choice now. So similarly, when talking of CRM with around 800 customers spread over 80 countries, so naturally all the actualities of 80 countries and all the flights and cargoes and disruptions to be included. So again, we can't do it manually. So this has to be learned by the machine, and naturally we are integrating that. And I think the third important thing which has come now post-COVID is the man management, or I would say the people management, to a large extent even the time management. The new I won't say issue or a challenge. I think even the emotions management, so-called mental health, these are the issues which are the new challenges which have come. So work environment and work culture is a big issue now. So that is again where started the process of having intelligent HR software, wherein we can integrate the talent, we can integrate the development, mental health. And of course, before we started the program, we were chatting, we are shifting a new office in Gurgaon. The whole objective is to have a broader culture, more openness, because we have seen that, of course, it's nice that people have been working home, but certainly everybody has developed certain level of, I would say, not frustration, but certain level of, I would say, boredom. So people need more interaction. Now we are okay to do everything digital, but certainly we still need to meet, we need to interact. How do we have innovative method? So on all the three fronts, on the customer front, production and inventory management front, and more so on the people front, we are going to use more and more software and more intelligent, I would say, all the technical jargon which Mr. Sani is explaining.
All right. All right. Mr. Suri, I agree, but for a lot of us, it is jargon when people talk about analytical science and, blockchain. R&D is one aspect I wanted to take a view from both of you. How much of digital transformation have we seen on the R&D ecosystem forefront? Mr. Sawney, if you can briefly highlight that, and then I'll go to Mr. Suri to understand the need to set up an ecosystem. Where do we stand, Mr. Sawney, as far as digitalization for the R&D ecosystem is concerned?
Let me answer it in the following manner, Archana. So today you have, and you're going to blame me for using more jargon here, and I'm trying not to. But I would like you to imagine, we talk about digital transformation. Think of it as there being a digital thread that runs all the way from your product design right down to your manufacturing onto your supply chain, right? And there is a digital thread that already is running in the context of life sciences pharmaceuticals, right from the drug discovery stages, right? So, it actually allows you to have all of your, let's call it the PLM side, where you're actually working on the design, and the drug discovery stages, right? And as you take it, to your labs and then onto your manufacturing, you have one common thread that runs. That means, it is possible right now for you to have, your engineering data, mashed up with your real-time, production data, and run scenarios which allow you to couple these two and have implementations which are, kind of like digital twins that allow you to simulate things, right? I'm seeing the concept of digital thread actually make itself very, very relevant to the life sciences pharmaceutical industries. But I'll be very interested in your point of view, Mr. Suri, as well.
Yes, Mr. Suri, how do you look at this R&D ecosystem and digitalization?
Ecosystem, I would say two ways. One, of course, is the basic infrastructure, whether we are talking of Make in India program or I would say in general. So we sadly are very much behind the basic infrastructure. So whether it is question of, I would say, the complete ecosystem when we talk, but I think on the digital front per se, I think the more and more use of data or data analytics, because when we finalize any product, any patent or any, I would say, move for the next 10 years, so we have to virtually, I would say, filter through thousands of molecules and thousands of patents and processes and litigation. So everywhere, certainly these things are being earlier done manually. Now there are smart, intelligent software which are, I would say, getting data through hundreds of different sources, and everything is there on the screens. And of course, these are a bit costlier than usual. So our teams are using all the latest equipments and devices. And of course, then finally, like Mr. Sani said, that when we go to the table, then we do not have to do all the experiments on their own. Many of these experiments are run on the computer. And I think the big success which everybody is noticing is on the vaccine. Everybody doubts that how can you make a vaccine in 6 months? How can you create a vaccine in 3 months? Actually, there are data, there are systems available in the data, and they are just running computer programs. And if this vaccine works for this, how will it work for this? So the only thing they have to do is actual experiment. Rest of the modeling is done by the computers. So we are bang on. And as AI is coming, I think this is a big boom for the industry.
We've spoken about disruptions. We've spoken about also the way out. There have been certain government programs like the PLI scheme that you highlighted. There have been certain other government programs on Make in India for R&D, etc. But in your sense, currently where we stand right now, whether we look at pharmaceuticals, medical devices, or overall life sciences as a sector, what are some of the pain points that needs to be addressed for us to take that leap and become self-reliant, for us to take that leap and become, a more robust supplier of medicines and devices to the world? What, in your sense, are some of the pain points that need to be addressed?
I won't call it pain point, but I would say there are certain improvements what we need to take. The biggest one, if I say one word is backward integration and the infrastructure. So we have been working on the, I would say, very thin because India is very strong in terms of finished dosages. We are the number one in drug master files. We have the largest number of ANDAs outside US. So of course, other than US, India is the largest producer. We are very good in making finished dosages. But unfortunately, we are very weak. I won't say weak. I mean, we are not very strong in making of APIs. Any more API also, we need intermediates. We need drug intermediates. We need the key starting raw material, which they say KSM. So that is where India is lacking. That is what we import from China. Even today, we have 70-80% import from China, and that's what China does it better. Now, if we want to replicate that, we need huge factories, huge infrastructure. For example, 30% of the top 100 products are biotechnology. So we do not have the alphabets of biotechnology still in India. We have one or two companies. I mean, we need to set up large facilities. So if we want penicillin G in India, which we were producing earlier by government sector, IDPL, HL were doing, they closed 20 years ago. If we want to redo, we have to have the facilities of that level. Now, I'm not saying government has to do it, private sector would do it, but for private sector to do it, private sector needs support. It's only not the financial support, it's only a moral support.
Mr. Suri, the ease of doing business that the government talks about, that hasn't replicated as much on ground as much as on paper is what you're saying. That still needs to be ironed out. Government on its part somewhere says, that it's the industry that doesn't come forward to that extent as much and does not invest as much in R&D particularly as we would require. How do we balance that in your assessment, sir?
So I think ease of doing business is happening, but like I said, there is no synchronization. One department says ease of doing business, second department comes and they add another 20 guidelines, SEBI comes, they add another 50 guidelines, then ROC comes, they introduce another 50 compliances, then GST comes, they add another 100 compliances. So there's not ease of doing business. So business is becoming more and more complicated, particularly for the larger sector. The compliance sector has become so complicated, so much big paperwork. So there's no more ease. We are making things more and more complicated. The general understanding of the government and all the bureaucrats sitting with all the experiences, the general understanding is that industry is not in the favor of the country. You can't, I mean, industry hai to galat hai, there is something wrong. I think that's where the attitude is an issue. In case the government has favorable, I would say, blessings on the industry can grow very comfortably. I don't think there's an issue. The only issue what we see is a perennial issue is the capital. In India, we do not have capital. We do not have a large capital. Our banks do not give loans for more than 10 years, door to door. It takes 3, 4, 5 years to set up a factory.
Mr. Sawhney, I'll give you the last word on the panel. We spoke about a lot of newer elements to talk about. We also spoke about, technological advancements. Mr. Suri also highlighted some of the issues that still needs to be ironed out for us to, take that leap forward. But the biggest thing that is on the minds of every industry which is operating right now is risk mitigation. How do we manage that at a time when disruptions are happening? How do we manage risk mitigation? What the kind of decisions companies should take when we are talking about risk mitigation, and where does technology come in on that? I think that would be a very good point to also wrap up the conversation and take a forward-looking stance on how should companies look at risk management, especially at a time of disruption.
I believe that how much the industry is able to exploit the power of digital is directly dependent on how the industry deals with the threats of cybersecurity. We've seen here, right in the Indian context, with leading Indian pharmaceutical companies having cybersecurity incidents, right? And some pretty major ones in the recent months, right? And we are by no stretch of imagination, neither the life sciences industry nor India, as a country, there are, millions of such incidents that are happening, and we've all read about them, here in India, in countries like US and so forth, right? It's just as simple as that. How effectively are you able to implement, the digital transformation programs is directly proportionate to how well are you able to manage the risks arising out of cybersecurity threats, right? Once our experience and business leaders would want to go back to the false sense of security of physical isolation. My plant, if it is physically isolated, cut from everything else, should be okay. It's no longer an option, as we've discussed, through the last several minutes. There's an explosion of devices and sensors and connectivity across the entire enterprise. Some of the plants have legacy equipments that do not have a very well thought of, access strategy, right? In short, there are a very vast array of access points, right? Which make it very easy for the people who are trying to get, who have malicious intent to try and get into your systems and to disrupt your enterprise, right? There is increasingly a lot of help that is available. There are, structured approaches, that are being put out. There is some very simple ideas. One that has been always good hygiene is defense in depth. Having layers that give you good protection, right? And variety of other things. Increasingly, physical security. What the pandemic has taught us is, you need to have the ability to monitor, movement of people, right? While we are all becoming very confident now that the news of vaccination is just around the corner and so forth for masses at large, but let's just not forget the fact that there are still parts of the country that are seeing uptick in the number of cases. It is important to really implement the basic hygiene, social distancing, etc. And you can, through the same digital technologies, actually enforce all of these things inside of factories, inside of office facilities and so forth. So I would just leave it at this, Archana. Having a sound risk assessment around your digital technologies, and then an appropriate mitigation plan is basic hygiene now and going into future.
You summed up the entire panel, because the topic of the panel is preparing for a virtual future. And we can only have a secure virtual, a strong virtual future if we have it secure, and hence cybersecurity becomes top priority along with physical security that COVID-19 has taught us. Well, gentlemen, Mr. Suri, Mr. Sawhney, thank you so much for bringing in your ideas, whether we are talking about AI and blockchains in manufacturing, whether we are talking about digitalization of the entire process of manufacturing and sale of products, and how companies have been managing it since the pandemic, and even now, and what lies ahead. What are the pain points? What are the issues that the pharma and life sciences industry is still facing that needs to be ironed out? Mr. Suri, Mr. Sawhney, thank you so much for sparing time, being here on this virtual platform with CNBC TV 18 and Money Control, and this program, Make in India, Pharmacy of the World. Many thanks.